You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform. And here on Newsfile, as always, we put Ghana first. And it's brought to you by Bank of Africa, strong as a group and close as a partner, MTN, everywhere you go. Ashasi University, educating ethical and entrepreneur leaders for Africa. Robert & Sons Optical Services, your comprehensive eye care service provider for 31 years. My Way Insurance, dial *165# on the MTN to join. Duraplus, how you get your water matters. Remember, where Duraplus goes, water flows. DBS Industries, roofing, Papa Fie. Rehoboth Social Housing, your housing dreams become reality. And my guests this morning have been Professor Kwesi Enin, Director, Faculty of Academic Affairs and Research, Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping Training Center, Professor Kwejo Appiah-Ejetia, Associate Professor, School of Law, University of Ghana. Here in the studio, Dr. Stephen Amoah, MP in Shaeso, and Samuel Nete George, MP Ningo Pram. We will be joined by Mary Ada also to do, she just joined us for the second part of the discussion. A few of your comments. Dr. Theo Champong also joins us now. A few comments now. Severus, you say there is a reason you separate the military and the police. One fights the enemies of the state. The other serves and protects the people. When the military becomes both, then the enemies of the state tend to become the people. Interesting message. Charlie Rain says national security keeps sending SMS asking that when we see something, we say something. And now those that will protect us, the military, are the ones beating us. So who will we say something to when there is the fear that we will be beaten? Musa Abator says the justification by the defense minister was absurd. It's ironically unjustified for anybody to support military soup in Ashaiman. Government has been reckless in providing security in a volatile area. The reaction of government in matters of security is always an afterthought. Theo Kofi says the murdered soldier was on a personal mission at Ashaiman. We have been made to believe he was on leave. This means he was not attacked in the course of duty. Well, how does it matter? Any attack is an attack. So I don't understand the action of the military. They should be ashamed of themselves. Well, you can say the military brought this upon themselves. You know, when Major Muhammad's issue happened, we were all weeping for Major Muhammad and talking for Major Muhammad's situation. But here we are, because of what they have done, you see, it has completely dwarfed even the murder being the focus of any discussion anywhere. Gary Seller, how can that be your name? Okay, intelligence-led operation, and they brutalized a whole community. Imagine there was no intelligence. What would have happened? Well, all of those people have actually been released, as we understand. You say, what prevented us passing a Major Muhammad bill that will specifically make lynching a very serious crime? Murder is crime. It's a serious crime in this country. Many people have been lynched. Some innocently without any national show of revulsion. That is true. In any case, will a statue be erected for this young soldier also? Thank you for that question. Okay, thanks for those messages. This message is rather long, but I can read just a bit of it for you. Good morning. The Sherman incident is most unfortunate. Both the event leading to the death of the young military man and the reaction of the military personnel therefrom. The military must not take the law into their own hands and brutalize civilians anyhow. We have come a long way from the dark old days. Never in our history, pre-Fourth Republic and during the Fourth Republican Constitutional Dispensation, have the military resolved any matter with their human rights abuses. If what we are told is true, in the end, it is not the police. Is it not the police who have been able to arrest the culprit through their intelligence? So the military showmanship that was demonstrated did not help matters. Rather, it will affect our already low human rights record. Sorry, Seth Asante, this is all I can read for you. Thank you very much. This one says he's in the security services and he's out of the country, and he was asked by, foreigners, what is going on in your country? And he was so ashamed. He says, I felt seriously embarrassed when my colleagues in office here in a country, I won't mention name, drew my attention to this brutality. They expressed shock and asked me what is happening in Ghana. I stood speechless when I stepped out of the office to the sitting area to watch the screen. The tendency for the deceased family to feel insecure in the community is high, as they will be tagged as being the reason behind the brutality of the innocent. Well, I doubt you are right. They may be there still. A final message from PK in Elembele. He says, in fact, how the president was silent on the military beatings in Ashaiman during the State of the Nation is a clear indication that the government is really in support of all the actions of the military. Can I say, but that's true. The defense minister has been clear, and the statement that has come from the Army High Command is clear. That is government action. Can I say they will use the military? Oh, sorry, I can't say that. Thank you very much. Now, the president was in Parliament to do a duty imposed upon him by the Constitution, to tell all of us through our representatives in Parliament what the state of our country is. And he did exactly that. Let's listen to him and return to the discussion.
President.
There are legitimate questions being asked about how the country's debt situation got to where it is. Mr. Speaker, let me state emphatically that we have not been reckless in borrowing and in spending.
Honourable members, I will allow spontaneous reaction to statements, but I will not allow debate of the statement. Your Excellency, you may proceed.
It is worth noting that the debts we're serving were not only contracted during the period of this administration. Mr. Speaker, we will spend money on things that are urgent, to build roads and bridges and schools, to train our young people and equip them to face a competitive world. Considering the amount of work that still needs to be done on the state of our roads, the bridges that have to be built, considering the number of classrooms that need to be built, the furniture and equipment needs at all stages of education, considering the number of children who should be in school and are not, considering the number of towns and villages that still do not have access to potable water, I dare say no one can suggest we have overborrowed or spent recklessly. Yes, I've been in a hurry to get things done, and this includes massive developments in agriculture, education, health, irrigation, roads, rails, ports, airports, sea defense, digitization, social protection programs, industrialization, and tourism. We can be justifiably proud of the many things that we have managed to do in the past 6 years. As I go around the country, I hear the pleas for more roads, schools, hospitals, and as the rainy season comes, I wish, as every other Ghanaian does, that we would have built more drains than we have. And I wish we have the resources to do more. I've said, and many others, including the managing director of the IMF, have said that our economy was doing well until COVID-19 and the war in Ukraine. Was doing well until COVID-19 and the war in Ukraine took us off course. That it is important to show clearly that the COVID-19 funds, COVID funds, were not misused. It is critical that we do not lose the confidence of the people that a crisis that they were led to believe we were all in together was abused for personal gain. Mr. Speaker, it was government that asked for the COVID funds to be audited, and I can assure this House that nothing dishonorable was done with the COVID funds. The shortage of some childhood vaccines in the country has concerned me greatly. This shortage, if prolonged, will affect negatively Ghana's childhood immunization program, which has been recognized as one of the most successful in the world. The WHO has only recently expressed worry. Freedom of speech has now reached such heights that even members of the diplomatic corps feel able to join in our national discourse and pronounce on matters that will be problematic for Ghanaian diplomats in their countries of origin. The participation rate of 85%, representing tendered bonds of 83 billion cedis out of the total eligible bonds of 97.7 billion cedis, constitutes significant success for the DDE program. The 83 billion cedis bonds that were successfully tendered also represents 64% of the outstanding domestic debt of 130 billion cedis at the end of December 2022, as pension funds have been expressly exempted from the DDEP. I want to take this opportunity to thank organized labor, pensioners, pension fund managers, the Ghana Association of Banks, the Ghana Securities Industry Association, the Ghana Insurance Association, the Individual Bondholders and Retirees Forum, and all others who have contributed to make the domestic debt exchange program a success. Mr. Speaker, I know it has been said over and over again in the past weeks, but the voluntary nature of the DDE program bears repeating, as is the fact that the government is committed to honoring all coupon payments and maturities in respect of both old bonds and the new bonds, in line with government fiscal commitments.
Right, so that was the president in Parliament. He said a number of things. The minority particularly disagree. There are also others who disagree with some of the statements that he made, particularly with some of the things he touted as being first, achieved under him in the Fourth Republic, for as long as this nation has existed. He has shocked better than anyone else, some in Africa, and some of the achievements too, he says, it's Ghana that is leading in the world. You heard about using drones to supply medicine or medicine delivery. Right. Let me begin with Dr. Theo Echampong, political risk analyst. Thank you for making time to join us, Doc.
Good morning. Pleasure to be here. And hello to everyone in the studio and to Daniels.
Great. So Your thoughts?
Good question. There's a lot to unpack.
Yeah.
In terms of what the state of the nation is. But I think it's obvious that Ghana is going through one of its most difficult periods in its recent history.
Yeah, he said it himself that he wanted to focus on the economy.
Absolutely. We'll come to the economy bit, but things are tough everywhere globally. Of course, Ghana is no exception in that regard. And we've seen inflation at 20-year highs. We've seen the local currency since last year lose a lot of value. We've seen our reserves dwindle. We've seen our debt go up, and the attempt to restructure all of that. But if you were to ask me what the sort of overall scorecard is in terms of the state of the nation, I would say it is not good. And probably out of 10, I would probably rank it 5 out of 10 based on the current state of both the economy, but also on the social side of things, and even on the security side of things, as well. But what also concerns me really is part of the attempt by the president and certainly by government functionaries to deflect blame and to create the impression really that everything is down to COVID and down to Russia, Ukraine. And you can see some of the statements that the president, made in some of the clips that you played.
Yeah, he's saying,
they have not been reckless, quote unquote.
He said he predicated that statement by the fact that those of you for your preconceived agenda, that's what he called it, preconceived agenda, or maybe because of the severity of the economic circumstances, you are simply refusing to acknowledge that things were the best until COVID set in, and then Russia, Ukraine also hit us. And he says the managing director of the IMF, has even agreed that this is the case.
Yeah, so things were going well, but I have been on this program and others, and we have gone through some of the numbers. And what is very clear is that the country had an underlying ailment. I used to call it, we had the fiscal diabetes. So just like COVID, those that died and were said they had, diabetes and hypertension and you name it, it's pretty much the same thing with us. So this really idea that we were, quote unquote, doing well, yes, doing well on the surface, but there were deep issues, including issues when it comes to the borrowing. And I am very much convinced in my mind that we have been reckless when it comes to borrowing and when it comes to spending. You can look at that in a number of ways. But quickly, if you look at the statement again that the president made, that it is worth noting that the debts that we are servicing were not only contracted during the period of this administration. Yes, that is true. But if you give or look at it in the final details, a lot of it actually has been contracted during this administration. So I prepared a little table that I shared with your producers just to maybe put on the screen for the benefit of Ghanaians. Let's just use the Eurobond as one of the examples here. All of Kufuor's administration, it was 750 million. John Mahama borrowed 3.75 billion. And the Akufo-Addo administration from 2018 to 2021, before we lost access to the capital market, had borrowed 11.05 billion. So almost 3 times as much as John Mahama had borrowed, and almost about 10 times as much as John Kufuor had also borrowed in that respect. So the idea for me that we have not been reckless in borrowing and spending, and sometimes what people say is quote unquote borrowing.
He talks about the unprecedented road construction, and he says much of the borrowing has gone there. He says here is the evidence of the road works that have gone on. How do you challenge him?
So what is the quality of the roads that have been constructed, right? Number two, you also need to borrow with an ability to actually service back your debt. And what clearly we have found ourselves in is that we are almost broke as a country and cannot service our debt. Just a couple of weeks ago, we got, further downgrade on our credit rating. So if you say you've not been reckless, and the data and the evidence clearly shows that we have been on an unsustainable path that has led down this way. I mean, it's for Ghanaians to come up to whatever conclusion they want to make on it. But the data is very clear in terms of the borrowing path. But there are also some positives. I mean, it's not all negative in that sense. So if you want to really do a full analysis or assessment on, let's say, the economy, for me, there are 7 indicators that I often look at, from GDP growth to inflation, to lending rates, to the external sector, and then to exchange rates and things like the fiscal operations. And then on the social side of things, I would look at things like, the harmony on the labor front, and then the general sense of security that Ghanaians feel. And that's where, when I analyzed all of these collectively, I think, I would score the government 5 out of 10. But a bit of the positive out of all of this really is that when you look at our external sector, particularly our trade balance, for the last couple of, about a year or so, we actually have been exporting more as a country than we are importing. So if you look at last year's numbers, we exported $17.4 billion worth of goods, and then we actually imported just under 15 billion. So that gave us a positive trade balance. So ideally, what this should have done is then to show up our reserves and allow us to, have a much better city. But because you also had a negative outflow from your balance of payments, and specifically your capital account and then your the financial account, that then means that all these positive trade balance that we got is more or less been offset by those outflows. Hence why we're seeing our gross reserves dwindling from 9.7 billion as of December 2021, or 4.3 months of import cover, now down to 2.7 months or 6.3 billion as of December 2022. So that's really, it's for me, the state of the economy. Ghanaians are feeling it in their pocket. Inflation is 54%. Exchange rate year to date, we're talking almost 20% depreciation. And we all know what is happening with the debt situation and the debt restructuring and the IMF program, which perhaps we can come back to in a moment.
Okay, thank you. Now, let me come to Steve. And Steve, I found something really curious. The president took us back to his 2020 State of the Nation address. And in that 2020 State of the Nation address, he referred to rating agencies, upgrading Ghana's ratings and also improving Ghana's outlook for the year, notwithstanding the fact that it was an election year. I was surprised to hear the president, go back to his speech and isolate portions, including when rating agencies were praising the country. The president has been attacking the rating agencies. He's gone to the level of his peers, to say that they should do something to have a local and not have this. We have had statements issued attacking rating agencies.
Samsi, thank you very much. I don't know where you pick just this, I should speak to this. I'm not saying you are wrong, but I'm not really understanding what you're talking about.
You could answer that briefly and then proceed.
I'm saying that because the statement you are making, I'm not really aware exactly what the president said, the context in which he used.
It's here. I'm
not saying it's not there, but I'm saying that what you are saying, I should have listened to the president, the context in which he used.
So I can comment. In Parliament.
Yeah, but I can't emphasize what you're saying. Can I go straight and speak to the issues?
Okay.
But yes, thank you very much. Samson, the point I'm making is that it is true that this country, we are suffering. Nobody can argue about that fact. Any honest person will say that this country, we are not doing well. It is also very true that globally and continentally, we are also suffering. As a continent, as a globe, as a nation or a state, that is a fact. You have some of the countries whose some of the primary indicators are better than Ghana, and others you have better than those countries. And that is why it is totally unacceptable. That's my opinion. For anybody to compare one country to another, because we have different dynamics. We have different dynamics. That's a fact. Our expenditures, our internal policies, rolling out social intervention for infrastructure needs and other things are different.
The issue is that you're saying that, and the president has said, which you guys have repeated umpteen times, that it was COVID that took us off, the trajectory, and it was Russia, Ukraine. So you heard it being asked of you. You say it affected the whole world. So what's wrong? Your neighbor is not as bad as you are.
No, that's not true. Let me tell you. If you talk of my neighbor, I'm saying that there are other areas we are also doing better than our neighbors. That's a fact. We have a lot of parameters. 2, I heard people talk about Ivory Coast and Co. They don't even have economic sovereignty. Listen, we keep on saying it. Ghana is sometimes one country that I don't understand some of the people. That because this is what we want to say, nobody can bring anything that we can all say that, oh, maybe initially I was wrong or right, but this is the picture. A country such as Ivory Coast is directly linked to the Central Bank of France. I don't think they even have central bank to determine their own monetary policies and ABCD. Aside, I'm saying that some of the countries have different infrastructural, social needs and implementations. That is why it's always acceptable doing industry performance against individual firms' performance. So you talk about, that's why they said that, oh, the globe was anticipated to grow or to have grown negative 0.3. Remember when the COVID really got hit the world so much. African continent grew negative to 0.2. Ghana grew 0.4. So you do industry or continent or globe against an individual member. That's the best thing to go. Something, put that aside. I don't think the president ever said all the happenings of today in terms of our economic needs is because of the COVID, and he never said that. What I heard is that we were doing well, Ghana was doing well till the COVID and the war. And he underpinned that statement by the emphatic statement made by the head of IMF. And I think that is a fact. Let's not behave like the president said that everything in Ghana. The previous analyst who spoke, I clearly understand most of the things he said. But let's be very honest, even practically without some of us who understand this finance and economic stuff, the very issues we raised, even when we were kids, during late former President Rawlings, may he so rest in peace, were the same thing raised during Omanpenyi Kufuor. The parameters are clearly known, things that we normally complain, from corruption, wastages, unemployment, lack of good roads, they are there. Through late Professor Mills, may he so rest in peace, and former President Mahama, and then the current President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. So, as a country, something, we have some things, fundamentals, that are anomalous, are wrong, that we want to, that one they are there. But the severity and the acute nature of what's happening today, and that's why when the president came, he was so humble, he was honest to me, and accepted the fact that there were challenges. That is a fact. But he used the opportunity to also answer certain key questions and also underpin the fact that it's globally induced. One, before that happened, what was the average growth of this country? About 7% for 3 years. Since 92, it was the only period for about 3 years we are having deficits of about 5%. Although some people move it to 7, even that one, it's something that is recommendable. Sorry, it's commendable, sorry. You understand what I'm saying? They even went further to say that there are a lot of other primary macro indicators that today they are not bad until the COVID. And this is clear, unless you want to lie. Let me tell you, lending rate before we took over was almost 40%. It came down to about 20% in the banking industry.
By what year?
Oh, just before the COVID. So you know what I'm talking about. If you check from the banks, 21.20 is a fact.
I'm just
in
asking
fact,
for information.
Policy rate, which is the government own interest rate, that's how I put it in a very simple term, was about 25.5. It came to about 12. T-bills have reduced from about 22.5 to about 12 and 14, the same period. So if somebody says the country was doing well, but for this thing, that is a fact. You cannot argue. But I also understand that we couldn't have said that everything is just because of the war. Because as a country, we have a lot of, perpetual issues of
Before COVID, were there warnings, including from experts locally, that the borrowing was getting unsustainable?
Today, let me explain something to you. If I'm lying, we have professors on board. Let's talk and bring internationals. Borrowing has gone up. It's a fact. But we have something called uncontrollable factors when you are appraising somebody's performance. One, we had a long period of impaired productivity uncontrollably in this country, where even we asked people not to go to work, but they were paid in our country. In fact, at a point, even the whole country had to stop going to work. And then after that, if 10 people were going to work, 5 would be allowed to go, other 5 would not go, and they were being paid. Private sector sacked about 40,000 people. If the records we all have, we stated in Parliament before, we lost payee greatly, we lost corporate taxes greatly, we had revenue shortfall over 11 billion, something. If you're having impaired productivity, your domestically generated revenue uncontrollably will go down. Yet you have obligations you needed to perform as a country.
Which you got more than a cushion.
That is not true. Let me explain.
Wait.
More than what we needed. Some say the facts are here. What we got here, how we use the money, they are here. Let me tell you something. Let me tell you, when you do this, even the way how I want to put my things.
Why, you just want to come on the show and just talk? No question to you?
No, when I end my statement, they ask me. I'm not saying
but you
that.
never really end. So if I ask a question...
I end one point. That's what I'm saying. Please, can you allow me?
See how you started. I asked you a question. You decided you are not interested in answering my question, but you would commence the way you prefer. I allowed you.
You see, asked about another statement. I felt I didn't have.
That's all right. That's all right. But,
so
but
I wanted to speak on what
I just wanted to say that it's all right. There's nothing wrong that you are speaking, and I'm trying to get you to explain something or something like that.
When I end my,
you never really end. If you check,
I'm not saying when I end everything. Something.
You never end.
Can you get me? What I'm saying is that if I have a point and I end the point, you can ask me. But when I start and you ask me, then even when I come back,
there's no way to know when you have ended the point.
Okay, you ask me. I'll answer. I just ask you.
I was only saying you were talking about what we have gone through as COVID and Ukraine war. Particularly in COVID, we are clearly aware of how much money that the government got.
No, something. I was explaining why we got here. The debt, you raise it. If I hadn't finished and asked me how much we got, then I'm out of my point. That's what I want to say. Because I had to end with explanation of why we got here. Then this one comes in. That one is a fact.
We are talking about we stopped going to work, people were not working.
Because you asked me, and which is a legitimate
Okay, please go on, just go on.
The point I was making...
Proceed. Yes, just go on.
The point I was making is that it is justifiable for Ghana to get where we are because of the impaired productivity. Anybody can argue from any point.
This didn't happen to only Ghana.
Yes, but other countries are suffering. Look, post-COVID inflationary rate of the world was about 3%, like 300%. You can check. I'm not comparing country to country, but even the giant economies, they were moving from 1.8 averagely, some of them to 11%. As I'm talking to you now, some of the giant economies, what is happening to them? Their debt to GDPs have moved beyond 100%. The point I'm making to you is that check all over the world. Some countries are doing better than Ghana. Ghana doing better than some countries. But if you pick up the global performance and the continental performance, then you can accept the fact that our situation largely induced by the COVID and the war. Look, we're importing things at about $4,000. The same item, because of COVID and war, we're importing them at about $14,000, $12,000 in this country. Is that not true?
The same World Bank you quote.
I'm not quoting this, I haven't quoted World Bank.
I said you.
It's a practical thing in the country.
You as in the government. The same World Bank you quote. And the president, gladly quotes and say, oh, we have been told that, oh, it was actually COVID that took you out of the trajectory. The same World Bank had said that the situation was getting really bad before COVID.
I think
That one you are not interested in.
Are you telling me I'm not? So the IMF, which is the same as the World Bank, last statement confirmed emphatically, and this is more even emphatic than what you're talking about in terms of emphasis, that Ghana was doing so much well till the COVID and the war. So what are you also talking about? Something, let's be honest with God and man. Ghana has fundamental challenges and issues. Everybody accepts that. But you can't tell me that if you have a wife and you're paying for the child's school fees, everything is going well, you're happy. Something happens to you uncontrollably and you're not able to perform the way it's, and there's evidence that it happened in the whole community. Everybody is suffering. Almost, buildings and families are suffering. They want to say that for yours, it's never yours.
And I get billions in dollars of support.
How can you? Other countries got billions. They still move 100 over that. What are you talking about? But even with that situation, some of the same parameters we are trying to say, oh, this government is the worst case scenario. They are better than we took over. We're growing 3.4%. Are we growing the same today? Even when Africa grew negative 2, 0.2, and the world predicted negative 3, 0.3, we grew 0.4. Let's sometimes be honest with ourselves.
Let me show you what the president now had to say about borrowing and the problem with it. So let's listen. Wait, hold on. Let's listen to the president before he became president.
That we can have a debt portfolio for our country that is sustainable is to make sure that the NDC loses this election in December. Kicking out the NDC will be the surest way we can to protect the debt structure of our country. Why do I say that? In the 4 years in which they have been in power, they have more than tripled our national debt. From 9 billion CDs, which was at the end of Kufuor's period, to 28 billion CDs today. In the 4 years of the NDC administration, they have contracted more debt than all the governments of our country, from Kwame Nkrumah right down to John Agyekum Kufuor. That is the nature of the situation confronting our country. And I dare say the president would agree with me that without the rebasing of the economy, the debt profile of our country today will be getting towards epic proportions.
So, I'll come to you now, Sam George.
Oh,
so,
it's fair I answer what you
No, wait. So, this is what this president had to say about the debt. And today, he's presiding over unprecedented debt level that accounts for where we are in now. That is the basis for the minority saying he is not talking about the state of the nation.
Something, the president engaged in a debt exchange program with the truth when he addressed Parliament. He simply just substituted the truth for alternative facts. Like you rightly pointed out, he spoke about a tripling in national debt, but we had projects to show for those. We have seen ×5, quintupling, if that's the right word, where we've moved from 120 billion in national debt to almost 600 billion. That's 500% increase. And we can't see the projects. In fact, what the president is doing right now is covetousness. He's coveting projects of other administrations and claiming that they are his. And I will show you clear evidence of that in my submission. But let's be clear in our minds. The president was very economical with the truth in his entire submission. And that's why the president was at pains to quote figures from 2020 and not quote figures from 2023, even though he was presenting a 2023 State of the Nations address. You expect to get an understanding. Nobody says don't quote 2020, but when you quote the 2020 figures, then you tell us what is the state of the nation today. The president gave a typical example of petrol prices and said last year we're buying petrol at almost 20 cedis, and now we are buying it at 13 cedis. And so he expected some praise for good work done. But the question is, when we handed over power to you, a gallon of fuel, which is 4.5 liters, was selling at 14 cedis. Now you are selling a liter, less than 25% of what we gave to you, about 22% of what we gave to you at 14 cedis for 13 cedis. And you say we should praise you. The president again, and let me go into the infrastructure. And I will just show to you the inconsistency of the president. In the 2022 State of the Nations address, this is what the president said. And I'm going to quote verbatim. In the 5 years of my government, so far, more roads have been built, improved, and upgraded than at any equivalent period under any government in the history of Ghana. So that would suggest that since 1957, this was his claim. Then he said some 10,875 kilometers of new roads, not existing roads, new roads have been constructed in these 5 years. Now let me read what he said this past Wednesday. Mr. Speaker, I would like to state categorically that this government has built more roads, he's taking away the new, more roads than any government in the history of the Fourth Republic. He's now run away from independence to just the Fourth Republic. The inconsistency of the president. And he says that the details are in this annex. And this annex that has been presented is the most shoddy piece of work any government has done in our history. I can look at Greater Accra, for example. And you know, it is painful to me as a Dangme MP and as a Dangme boy, that this government has put out clear evidence. This is the same government that, don't forget, put out a budget that excluded the Volta region. The Volta region had to complain. I think the 5 Dangme constituencies will also have to do the same. When you look at this, in the 6 years of this government, there is actually no work done in any of the 5 Dangme constituencies. This is the Greater Accra report. This is the president's own report that he presented to Parliament. Take this report. The Greater Accra region is there. Stick, I give it to you, and I can open it. Greater Accra.
How can you bring this here?
The president said no constituency has been left out.
And I'm saying to you something. This is Greater Accra. This is Greater Accra. Something. This is Greater Accra. This is asphaltic overlay. Asphaltic overlays. Starting on page 91 of 293, and it goes all the way. It goes all the way. I'm not talking about any other region. I'm talking about my region. It goes all the way from page 93 to page 1. And Greater Accra did get a large chunk of the roads to page 159. From 99 to 159. I'm saying that there is not one single project in Ponkatamanto, which is a Dangme constituency. Not one in Ningo Prampram, which is a Dangme constituency. Not one in Shayo Sudoku, which is a Dangme constituency, not one in Sege, which is a Dangme constituency, and not one in Adan. The 5 Dangme constituencies in the eastern block of Greater Accra. I am daring anybody to show me from the president's own appendix he gave one project that is in any of those 5 constituencies. This is the asphaltic overlay, Ministry of Roads and Highways, regional breakdown of
no constituency.
And I'm telling you, the president engaged in a debt exchange program with the truth. I'm just giving you evidence. I've shown you 5 Dangme constituencies in Greater Accra. Not one inch. I'm not talking of a kilometer. Per their own report was done in any of those five constituencies. And so that's what I'm saying.
Could be an oversight, maybe.
Well, that's what I'm highlighting. But I'm MP for Ningo Prampram. The last time the Ningo Prampram constituency saw an asphaltic overlay was in 2016 under the streets of Tema, when President Mahama made us get 14 kilometers of asphalt through Prampram all the way to Old Ningo. Nothing of that nature has happened in my constituency. So I can state on authority that not 1 inch of asphalt has been laid in 6 years in my constituency. And per the government's own report, I am saying from page 99 to page 159 of this report, the 5, not just Ningo Prampram, the 5 Dangme constituencies, the president has not done 1 inch of asphaltic overlay in there because he doesn't see us as Ghanaian enough. Now,
so it is a question of asphalt or no road project at all.
The large chunk of what they've done in Greater Accra is asphaltic overlay. Now, when you go to between pages 93 to 98 of the report,
I have my copy.
Again, they give completed projects, all regions. Now, in the 5 Dangme regions, constituencies again in the region.
You haven't answered my question.
I'm answering you. That's what I'm coming to. Okay. I'm saying that between page 93 and 98, they've listed all other projects outside of the asphaltic overlay. And I'm saying that in those projects that they have listed, in the 5 Dangme constituencies, there is only one that has been done. And that project is number 217.
Okay, at which page?
On page 95.
95, okay, go on.
Number 217, Greater Accra. Agency, Department of Urban Roads, Activity, Rehabilitation, Project Description, Rehabilitation of Jerusalem Road, Ningo Prampram. Length, 1.5 kilometers, status completed. I have constituents who are watching me. That road starts at New Jerusalem, is supposed to connect to Apollonia. That road was, the contractor on that road was Mrs. Mawums. For 2.5 years, Mawums is not on that road. Just 3 months ago, I had cause to go to the Minister of Roads and Dr. Abbas, the Chief Director, to raise the fact that the rains that fell actually cut off the road in two, because the contractor has abandoned site for 2.5 years due to lack of payment. Yet they report that it is completed. And I say to you that in all the projects, so from page 93 to 159, where they have listed all the projects, when it comes to asphaltic overlay, none in the 5 Dangwe constituencies. Yeah. When it comes to all other projects, only one in Ningo Prampram. In all the 5 Dangwe constituencies, none in Adan, none in Sege, none in Chayo Sudoku, none in Kumkatamanso. And the one in Ningo Prampram that they claim they've completed has not been completed. This is the dishonesty of the president. I'll give you a typical example of how dishonest the president was again. When the president said that we have so much freedom of speech that the diplomatic community is engaged in, the president forgets that on Tuesday, January 28th, 2020, he summoned the diplomatic community to Peduasi and issued them a stern warning to stop commenting on national issues. And that if they had any issues or evidence of corruption, they should bring it to his office. And was categorical in his condemnation of the American ambassador at the time, Sullivan. You understand me? And said she should have brought information to his office. Well, the diplomatic community is aware that every time we have taken corruption activities to the notice of the president, he has cleared them. Was the president in this country when there was a certain John Benjamin? Now let me take you to even my area, where I would say I have some level of expertise, where the president says that 93% of total fiber in our country.
East Legon Hills, does it fall within Katamanso?
It depends on what part. Part of it is part of the Adenta, and part of it is Katamanso. So it depends on which part of East Legon Hills that you are in. Yes,
but to that extent,
yes,
there is work there. So you cannot say categorically that there has not been.
If you can mention which, because you see, I have given you.
Okay. Let's take a break. We'll be right back. Let's take a break. We'll be right back. Welcome back. This is Newsfile, the most authoritative news analysis platform, and my guest on this second segment, Dr. Theo Champong, Mary Ada, whom I'll go to shortly, Dr. Stephen Amwa and Samuel Nete George. And I paused him to check something, to be double sure about something. And I find that on page 116, if you look at what we may call paragraph 691, there is Katamanso, yes, KKMA, Katamanso 0.85, and that is an asphaltic road, correct?
Yes, and Samson, when you pointed that out to me, I admitted that is one instance of Katamanso.
Okay.
But now,
wait, hold on. Yeah,
Samson, we have 912 projects in Greater Accra. There are 5 Dangwe constituencies, and we can only identify one in Katamanso out of 912. My point is made. If you think that out of if stickers and not you, sticker and government thinks that out of 912 projects in Greater Accra, the 5 Dangwe constituencies, only Katamanso gets one.
Okay. So in fairness, in the apportionment of the time, I'll give you 3 minutes, then I move on to someone else. Yeah.
I was speaking.
Please, 3 minutes, I'll stop you.
Yes, I was speaking about fiber. The president made the claim, and this is what the president said. Beyond the construction of roads, Mr. Speaker, this NPP administration has constructed more NCA licensed fiber optic cables than any other government in the Fourth Republic. 93% of our total. That's incorrect. Because in Ghana, currently the biggest or longest stretch of fiber is the Eastern Corridor fiber. That Eastern Corridor fiber was commissioned was cut for it by Haruna Idrisu in September 2012, then Minister for Communications. It was commissioned in May 2015 by Omane Boama and President Mahama. 800 kilometers, starting from Ho with extensions to Uhas all the way to Boku, running through 122 kilometers. This government comes in 2017 and does an extension from Ho to Accra, 165 kilometers. How a government that did 800 kilometers can be said to have done less than a government that did 165 kilometers beats my imagination. Then you have the metro fiber. The metro fiber, we have the Bemakam campus, 40 kilometers, completed in 2016. You have the Kolebu campus, 35 kilometers, completed in 2016. You have the Accra metro fiber, 200 kilometers, completed in 2016. Tamale metro fiber, 51 kilometers, completed in 2016. Home metro, 30 kilometers, completed in 2017. All of this are government of Ghana fiber, owned 100% by the government of Ghana. Under the NDC, on the 10th of July 2015, Omani Boama again was there to commission another fiber project by Internet Solutions, Mrs. Internet Solutions, and then Felix Okfosu represented Omani Boama again in 2016 when Google launched the 1,200 kilometer metro fiber project in Accra, Tema, and Kumasi. Okay. So this is the NDC's track record. Now, under the NPP, and I end here in 30 seconds, the NCA has only licensed 5 agencies since 2017 to do fiber. Comsys, Spectrum Fiber, Gridco, Vobis, and Group Vivendi Africa. Of all of this, the only company that is now constructing fiber is Spectrum Fiber, which is doing the Western Corridor Fiber project, which is another 880 kilometer fiber project, which has not been completed. So our total national fiber holding is just under 7,000 kilometers of fiber. 5,680 kilometers was done under the NDC. How can President Akufo claim that?
Thank you. Mary, I know that for you, from where you sit, good governance, issues of corruption. Corruption didn't feature actually. I'm not sure. I heard the word, but there were issues that were mentioned that had to do with corruption. From where you sit, from the Ghana Integrity Initiative, let me not limit you. What is it that caught your attention in this address that is the real state of the economy, or it's not?
Thank you very much, Samson. Good morning to you, your viewers, and also to the other panelists. I believe that a lot has been said today for which some have caught my attention. I think that incrementally the president is beginning to acknowledge the enormity of the challenges this country is facing. And in acknowledging that, despite the fact that he attributes the challenges as you have been discussing to COVID and Ukraine, which to some extent, perhaps we would say if they had not occurred, we would have moved in a different trajectory. But we also know that even before that, there were warnings of the way we were going. And for me, what has caught my eye in the past 2 State of the Nation's addresses is the conscious effort to eliminate the issue of corruption in the State of the Nation addresses. It's not emphasized. Yet still, we know that this is a president and a government who came to power wholly on an anti-corruption message. We agree, admittedly, that they've done some things in that regard, but we also know that a lot has happened, which is unfortunately fueled the issues around corruption. And for me, I thought that the president should remain focused on that agenda, because we know that in systems where transparency and accountability thrive, we are able to secure some resources which then would be utilized for the development we all
What else should he have said about corruption? For example, he debunked the issues about COVID spending, that there has been corruption in them. The community and school spraying exercises, he told us that the claims that there's corruption there is not correct.
Something I just wanted to tell you that those claims, and I was coming to that the unfortunate assertions he continues to make that there were no wrongdoings. It's very unfortunate. It makes the citizens he wants us to be insignificant, because these same citizens bring out issues. And so we should merit them with some level of respect, that we can think we know what is happening and we have done research. For instance, let me take us back to the 2020, where he made assertions that this country was doing very well until COVID. It is also a fact that 2020 we had elections and there were issues, serious issues, where we had a DCE also speaking to the fact that COVID money had come through her hands to be utilized for whatever it was, you do not know. And this is something that happened, which advocacy was done on and nothing happened. If you remember, we spoke to issues around the Sputnik V, vaccine and the issues around the procurement and how it was dealt with. Again, this is an advocacy that you were involved with, which came to nothing. Parliament itself took over the issue, and we didn't have anything to show for it. So for me, the fact that the president continues to do this, and when they say he's a clearing agent, he takes serious exception to, it's unfortunate. If you remember, again in 2020 and 2021, the Ghana Integrity Initiative undertook a corruption risk assessment of the government of Ghana interventions they had put in place to see the robustness of these when it comes to the risk assessment metrics and looking at transparency of the processes, accountability of these processes, participation of the citizenry in them. You realize that most of them came up with red flags, and if we are mentioning specific projects, we could mention some of them. Procurement was a serious issue because the Procurement Act says in emergencies you can't procure using single source or restricted procurement methods, which was then wholesale. And then when it came to people providing evidence to support some of these procurements, it became a problem. And we all know this. There are more. Currently, we have issues around the NDA, where the both of us come from, which we expect to see a lot of action going into.
But there's been a lot of action. There's been a lot of action. The two deputy CEOs that were dismissed, he's gone ahead to appoint a new CEO, which means the CEO himself has also been done away with, and there's prosecution that is going on. Forgive me, but we have actually run out of time. But I want Steve here briefly, Steve, because of the clip I played and the question of debt and Sam George's response. In a minute.
In a minute, yes. I think just before then, let's get this clear. I checked from here. Eastern region, roads done and ongoing, it's less than 6 billion, if I get my units correct here. Greater Accra alone is over 19 billion. In terms of percentage, Eastern region, yes, Eastern region, the percentage to the total is 7%. Greater Accra, 26%. So I don't think our president is the type that will do what my brother here is saying. Initially, he said nothing. The people they are not part of Ghana. I think we need to be careful the things we say to depolarize this country. We are a country of unity and love. Okay. We need to build the needed cohesion and move this country forward. But something, just to end with what he said, this issue about what the president said, look at the timing. I keep on saying that we have never had a situation we have today before that compared us to increase our debt financing arm of the total financing of this government. And the GDP was not growing uncontrollably. And yet this is a situation, don't also forget that in Parliament, because of the seemingly balance, my brother here and his friends make sure that they impaired every single revenue generation policy that could let us be in a good light. Okay. That didn't even work. Right.
My guests have been Dr. Theo Champong, economist and political risk analyst, Mary Ada is programs manager, Ghana Integrity Initiative, Dr. Stephen Amwa, MP in Shaeso, and Samuel Nete George is MP in Ningo Pram. My outfit, as always, is by Habil Scruter. Have a good afternoon. I'm Samson Ladi Anyanini.